One of my favorite details in indiecross is that when you take a look at the rogue's POV, sometimes you can see the character's UI that's on the screen. You can see Frisks, the Knights, Cuphead, and even Drifter for a split second. So, if the rogues can detect the details of the characters, why is Niko not part of the UI? If you ask me which character in indiecross is the biggest outlier of them all, I would have to answer the Among Us crewmate. If you ask me which main character is the biggest outlier of them all, the answer is even more obvious: Niko from OneShot. Niko comes as a bit of an oddball to the entire series because they're the only character who doesn't really have an ability. No fighting, no flighting, and sure, you can say that fixing items is part of OneShot, but do you really need to have an item break in each episode so that Niko stays relevant? Like, seriously, we have grown adults relying on this 8-year-old to fix up a weapon. Regardless, Moro has hinted very clearly that OneShot is going to play a very crucial role for the entire series. But just how significant can OneShot really be to the plot, and why? It's not really an action game as I said earlier, so how can a game like OneShot pose a multiversal threat to the entire series? Well, to understand that, we need to take a deeper look at OneShot's story to figure out what exactly is going on with this game in Niko. So with that covered, I hope you can sit back and enjoy the video. OneShot's story starts with a program called OneShot, which I'll be calling as the World Machine from now on. What makes this program completely unique is that it's completely sentient and can pretty much talk to you whenever it feels like. But as far as stories go where living machines are actually evil, the program of OneShot isn't really malicious. It genuinely values the life of real living beings. But there's a problem with this. OneShot's core programming was designed to trap a real person inside of the game. When you boot up the game for the first time, that's when the capturing happens. This real person will then be assigned to the role as savior to a world that's dying and riddled with glitches. You, as the player, must help this person save the world itself. And then the poor soul who was unfortunate enough to be the victim would be none other than Niko, making them the only real person inside of the world of simulation. Quote, "The people here, they're code too, you know this. All extensions of my own programming. You though, you're the only person who's actually real here. That's why it's pointless to put you in danger to save them. To save me." End quote. In order to save the world, you must return the sun. But in order for Niko to go home, you must destroy it and kill the program. Because the game knows it can't fight its core programming, it becomes really anxious knowing that its whole existence is putting a real person in danger. That's why throughout the whole game it keeps telling you to save Niko, even if it means destroying the program. It never really sees itself worth saving in the first place. But all of that changes once you go through the game's Solstice route. You see, the World Machine is actually really capable of doing really great things. It just needs a little push in the right direction. Cause that's exactly what Niko did in the Solstice ending. When Niko convinces that the World Machine has so much potential, that there's something alive about it, and that it's someone who's absolutely worth saving for, it's finally able to focus. It's finally able to believe in itself. It's able to rewrite its own code and create a good ending, where saving the world will also return Niko back home. Turns out the glitches you see in OneShot, that's all because of the program being stressed. And because the program has full control, now it's completely able to fix its own errors. No longer does it need to follow its predetermined code, it can change itself if needed to, including the removal of this mental link. So now when Niko goes home, it can live freely without the need of a real living being. So what does any of this have to do with indiecross? Well, a lot actually. First, let's start with Niko. This backstory explains what Niko is really supposed to be. A real person, not really something that's made out of code. This is important if you take a quick look at the antagonists of the series. Unreal Engine, Game Maker Studio, Godot, Unity, and this fifth interesting character we'll talk about later called Sara. You might notice that all of these characters are based out of game engines, which is the property that every other character is made out of. Now, I'm not trying to say that being made of code makes the other characters fake or that their journeys are any less real. What I'm trying to say is that because all of these characters are based out of code, these characters are weak under the powers of the game engines. Let's take a look at the Game Maker Rogue, for example. His abilities include changing the properties of a character, something that you can do while developing with an engine. He is also able to spoil the entire plot of a whole game, just like how he shows Drifter the events that happen on his own game. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because her whole story is written down in a program that the rogue can just read it like a script. But how does all of this affect Niko? Well, for one, you can't really modify Niko's properties since they're not really code to begin with. And if you ask if the rogues can detect one-shot story, well, it's actually totally possible because the world machine straight up admits that the normal routes are pretty much written inside of its protocol. That is, except if you do the Solstice route, where you and Niko break the game so much, the world machine straight up admits that this route isn't even written inside of its own code. Quote again, all of this was outside of the protocol. This session was never supposed to happen the way it did. The story wasn't written into my protocol at all. But to truly shine how much this power means to Niko, I want to bring up a character that I glossed over earlier, Maidusara. According to Moro, she's not really anything specific. She's mainly there because obviously Moro can't really implement every single game engine. That's why he said that Maidusara is up to interpretation. Using this info, we can conclude that Maidusara is, quote-unquote, part of the game engines. And since we know that Niko is immune to game engines, it's very likely that Niko's secret ability is to be immune to Maidusara's petrification. You know, I'm starting to think that her name is actually pronounced Medusara. However, Niko being an anomaly also has downsides as well. First of all, without the sun, it's totally possible for the multiverse to not know what world Niko is supposed to be at right now, since Niko isn't really part of that world. And I don't think it's possible to open up a portal to Niko's reality since it's not really a video game world. This might explain why Niko does not have any UI at all when scanned by the rogue. Second, to add to this, I don't think Niko can get a nightmare form, not in a normal sense at least. If you don't know what nightmare forms are, they're essentially these overpowered versions of a character and their powers are depending on their own realm. But again, OneShot isn't Niko's realm. It's just as alien to Niko as the world Niko's in inside indiecross. And the one ability Niko has, which is talking to the player, doesn't even come from Niko. It's unfortunately just a part of the mental link. We know this because at the start of OneShot, Niko is completely unaware of that ability, and once Niko goes home and leaves the game, we also caught contact with Niko. If anything, the sun Niko's holding has more power than Niko. Not just because of it being a power source of course, but because the only way for Niko to go home is to break it. But the question is, where is the sun in indiecross right now? My best bet is that it's completely stolen by Charlotte, because we've seen that Charlotte has a keen interest at the sun. We don't know for what though, because we don't see her POV on that scene, but my best bet is that it's gonna be used as a power source. I mean, she mysteriously disappeared at the end of the episode. That's not gonna come back at all. But to top all of this, I think I should mention one more thing that could absolutely turn the tables for the entire series. Listen, while I said before that Niko can't really get a nightmare form because Niko doesn't belong in that world, there's still someone else who absolutely could, the world machine itself. And let me tell you, if this happens, everything is gonna go into chaos. Look, there's no doubt that this world machine is on a breakdown right now. The anxiety it has about harming a living being, well, Niko is missing now. And even if they return safely, it still needs to sacrifice itself so that Niko can really go home. But that's where things would change. Pay attention to the prologue in episode 2. Any one-shot player will recognize immediately that it takes place in the normal ending, which means the world machine has yet to learn its lesson as the one it learns in Solstice. I think this character arc is exactly what the world machine needs in indiecross as well, but now in a more nightmarish way. That's why, in order to fix everything, Niko and the world machine must undergo a Solstice route, this time a more twisted version of it. And it needs Niko to convince it to realize its full potential. No longer is the world of OneShot dying, but the entire multiverse. Realities are destroyed or taken over, and if there's anyone who can fix broken code, it's the world machine. All it needs is a nightmare form for the World Machine to access every single reality. And with it, no longer is the World Machine responsible for just itself and Niko, it's responsible for the entire multiverse as well. If things go right, everything will be fixed, all the worlds will be saved, and the people we lost along the way will be restored. But should the World Machine stress over the sheer amount of pressure? Well, let's just hope that someone else has a backup plan. But remember, that's just a speculation. A game special.